Hey, I'm gonna do some more reading out of the Mo section, and really excited, kind of freaked out. We haven't really gotten feedback on this section yet, so sorry. Um, yeah, I'm really, really curious to hear what you guys think. I don't think anybody who has access to the Google Doc that I'm actually writing this into has gotten this far yet. Yeah, by the way, if I know you or Brian knows you and you want access to that Google Doc to read it, let me know. Yeah, depending on how many people want that, I may or may not say yes. Yeah. Anyway, super excited to get feedback on this. This next section is like really, really just straight up exposition heavy, but I tried to make it in an interesting way and probably need to cut down a little bit of this some. So yeah, I would especially like information on whether or not my attempt to structure the exposition in an interesting way is successful, and also whether it's just too much in one go. Yeah, good. I'll just start reading. As I concluded the story, several hands shot up. All of our fledglings are taught that there are times one must listen without interrupting. This does not, however, stop them from being curious. If anything, the practice of holding on to a question for an hour or more while continuing to listen to ever more question-begging material induces a sort of desperate intensity, as if the questions are living beings that might escape before making it past the asker's lips. At times like this, the desperate fervor of my students to be the first to ask a question, struggling to contain their composure while near boiling over like little teapots with the need for understanding, their earnest little brows furrowing and unfurrowing, is almost funny. No, it's always funny. I remember being one of them, though, as if I've grown out of it. And for their sakes, I try not to laugh. Brows creased further and hands started to wiggle as I looked across the fledglings and smiled, holding the moment of frantic quiet, soaking in the intensity of their curiosity. Finally, I broke the tense bubble of silence I'd formed around us. Vivacity? Vivacity is a small child, full of such a passionate curiosity for almost everything that I don't know how her tiny frame can hold it all. She wears the brightest colored clothing her master or mother will get her, and she's always patching the tiny holes her various adventures inevitably cause with scraps off of other people's clothing. When she can't patch the holes herself, she brings them to me to ask back together. We joke that she's not a crane, she's a crow. These jokes will stop when she's older. She was starting to shake, and it seemed almost cruel to keep her waiting. I hoped she would ask something blasphemous. She asked something blasphemous. Why did Asara raise the wall? Was there really no other way to stop people from fighting? I nodded. Asara democratized knowledge. Knowledge that was hidden precisely because proper application conferred a great deal of power. In doing so, in many ways, she democratized power itself. But who decides who can use that power? Who decides what it can be used for? In an ideal society, each person governs themselves, but even we recognize that such a society is likely fantasy, because there will always be individuals that cannot regulate their own behavior. But what would happen if 1,000 new idiomancers were all learning the skill at once, with no one to tell them what not to do? What happens when people who have been oppressed all their lives liberate themselves only to find others want to take away the freedom and knowledge they have gained? An untempered idiomancy changes people, not always for the better, not always with their consent. What happens when people come to you for wisdom and a few words from you can change their very nature? What if they come to you for salvation and the tools of their deliverance also end those identities that sought freedom? Not all of the atrocities Asara's people committed were deadly. What happens when the words you speak are changing you and you aren't even aware of it? Do you think Fletching set out to be a monster when he first spoke the word of death to save his people? My students were clearly forming all kinds of grisly pictures in their minds as I continued. Idiomancers are capable of exercising a great deal of influence over those around them, while also potentially altering themselves in the process. After living a great deal of time alone with our gifts, we've come to understand how to be responsible with them, and now reliably train people to do so. When Asara raised the wall, this was very much not the case. She likely had very good reason to fear what continued contact with the outside world would mean for her people and for everyone else. Now that we've mastered idiomancy, will the walls come down someday? Chimed in Hopeful, forgetting to raise their hand. I frowned and thought for a moment. It is difficult to say, I replied slowly. Although we have learned to utilize idiomancy responsibly, we have no means by which to ensure that others would do the same. You must remember that fear of her own people's power wasn't the only reason Asara raised the walls. She wished to protect her people from the anger and thirst for power that persists in much of the outside world as much as she wanted to protect the world from indisciplined idiomancy. The Cranes say that it is not ours to interfere, that all we must do is wait, and when other peoples have attained a similar level of wisdom, they will find ways to fly in and meet us. Our ways are not the ways of the rest of the world, and each culture must find its own path to realization. For myself, I hope that one day we may rejoin the rest of the world. I think we will have much to learn from each other. Judging by the looks of puzzlement, it seemed most of my students would need a moment to process all of this, but one hand shot back up almost as soon as I had finished speaking. Discernment, I called. Why couldn't many people learn both idiomancy and shapeshifting? Is it that hard? Is everyone in Soria a master of idiomancy? Can everyone become a crane? Does everyone who masters one master the other? I guess not, he responded slowly. But why not? I mean, I know becoming a crane is hard, but why is it hard if there was a whole tribe of falcons and other beastlings? What is a crane for? What does it symbolize? Becoming a crane is hard because most of us aren't naturally crane-shaped. To the Amnyrii, the beastlings, the purpose of shapeshifting is survival in a wild place, and to express a part of oneself that cannot be expressed as a human. For us, the purpose of becoming a crane is to follow Asara's journey, not to become more of what you are, but to change your nature, transcend to something higher. It is a good form for a culture with so many idiomancers because a crane flies towards peace, towards wisdom, towards fulfillment and simple virtues. All things that clearly indicate one has achieved the temperance necessary to ethically guide a society with great power. Discernment knit his brows together and asked, Is crane the only transcendent form? I was a little caught off guard. That question didn't occur to most people until much later, if it occurred to them at all, and my own line of research on this topic had made it difficult to give a response that was both accurate and succinct. Tentatively, I answered as my master had answered me when I was in discernment's place. I believe transcendence can look like many things, but for us, here, it looks like a crane. Cranes have grace, restraint, equanimity. Their considerations must be made with the good of everyone in mind. These qualities ensure that our leaders remain entirely in service to the people and will not upset the delicate balance of our society by seeking quick change or disproportionate power. While it is true that one might possess these characteristics without possessing the power to become a crane, it is also true that one absent these characteristics may never become one. That doesn't seem very fair, observed Vivacity. I let out a long sigh. What is fair for the individual is not always what's best for society. And whenever one is weighed against many, we must always choose the many, even if it's not always comfortable. I gave her a weak little smile and hoped that would suffice. For the moment, at least, it did. Hands went back up. Ingenuity? Were the dragons real? Oh, that is an excellent question. In nature, dragons do not exist. The dragons of the beastling tribes do appear to have been real, but what exactly that means is a matter of debate. There are tales of the dragons doing a great many things, and it is impossible to separate speculation from metaphor from fact. They're said to have been the 13th tribe of the Amnyrii, but as you all know, a shapeshifter cannot take the form of an animal they have not seen, which is perplexing, since you cannot observe an animal which does not exist. This has led many to speculate that dragon was a title or designation. Rather than a physical shape, it may have been a description of one with a transcendent spirit. Whatever the dragons were, we know that the Amnyrii treated them as great leaders. And as far as we know, Fletching killed all or nearly all of them when they came to speak with Asara. Since then, they have passed into myth. Ingenuity appeared satisfied with this answer. Something about the death of the dragons has always sort of haunted me. Fletching hadn't set out to become what he was. He was once kind, generous, a good leader, but his carelessness with himself destroyed an entire way of being, integral members of his own society, a knowledge that will likely never be recovered. There's something chilling about the fact that one terrified, unstable person wiped all of that out in a matter of minutes, and there's probably no getting it back. It would be like if all the cranes were eliminated in a breath and the towers of the 7 nests burned. Many have argued that this is the type of destruction the walls still guard against. I still don't know if I believe this is true, but if it is, perhaps it's right they still stand. We made our way through the remaining questions, and eventually all were satisfied, or satisfied enough. I dismissed the fledglings and I rose to leave. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think.